The gentle hum of quantum machinery filled the laboratory as Dr. Lamb adjusted the final settings on his creation. His fingers, precise yet trembling with anticipation, calibrated the microscopic dials of what appeared to be an ordinary wristwatch. If ordinary watches contained miniature particle accelerators and temporal displacement algorithms, 10 years of research, he whispered to himself. The words hanging in the sterile air of Hanoi University's Temporal Theory Department. 10 years to reach this moment. The year was 2045, and the world's scientific community buzzed with theoretical discussions about time travel. Most researchers focused on historical observation possibilities or the lucrative tourism potential. But Dr. Lamb had always been different. He didn't want to merely peek at history. He wanted to prove the fundamental possibility of temporal displacement, to demonstrate that humans could transcend their linear existence. His quantum watch represented the first preliminary steps toward actual time travel, as he had carefully phrased it in his funding proposals. In truth, he believed it was much more than preliminary. The equations balanced perfectly. The quantum entanglement matrices stabilized at precisely the predicted values. According to everything he understood about temporal physics, this device should work. A single rose sat in a vase on his desk, a gift from Mai, his technical assistant, to commemorate this day. Its red petals caught the artificial light, creating a warm contrast to the clinical environment. "Are you really going through with the test today?" Mai asked, entering the lab with a tablet displaying the day's diagnostics. Her dark eyes reflected both excitement and concern. At 32, she was younger than Dr. Lamb by 15 years, but possessed an intuitive grasp of programming that made her invaluable to the project. "Just a minimal test," Dr. Lamb replied, not looking up from the watch. "Nothing dramatic, just sending a message." Mai placed the tablet beside him. The university board specifically requested no tests without their oversight committee present. "The oversight committee wouldn't understand the significance of what we're doing," Dr. Lamb said, finally looking up. "They'd demand another 6 months of theoretical modeling before allowing even the smallest practical test." From across the room, "Hi," Dr. Lamb's graduate research student offered his support. "I agree with Dr. Lamb. We should start with something small anyway, just to verify the basic principle." At 24, Hai embodied youthful curiosity. His enthusiasm often pushed boundaries, sometimes productively, sometimes recklessly. Today, Dr. Lamb appreciated the support. "See, even Hai understands," Dr. Lamb said, smiling at Mai. "I'm only sending a piece of paper, a note, that's all." Mai sighed, recognizing the familiar determination in her mentor's eyes. "What will the note say?" Dr. Lamb grabbed a small square of paper and wrote 4 simple words with a blue pen. "Hello from the past." He held it up. Simple, unmistakable, and completely harmless. "And where, or rather when, are you sending it?" Mai asked, crossing her arms. "Just 24 hours into the past, to this very spot. If it works, we should find the note already here when we check the security footage from yesterday." Dr. Lamb placed the folded note within the small chamber attached to the quantum watch. The device featured a miniature containment field designed to transport small objects across the temporal boundary. He entered the coordinates, same spatial location, exactly 24 hours earlier, and initiated the sequence. The quantum watch emitted a soft blue glow. The laboratory lights flickered momentarily. A high-pitched whine, just at the threshold of human hearing, caused all 3 scientists to wince. Then, silence. The note had vanished from the chamber. "Did it work?" Hai asked, rushing over. "Let's check yesterday's security footage," Dr. Lamb said, turning to the computer terminal. The three huddled around the screen as Dr. Lamb accessed the previous day's security feed. At precisely 3:42 p.m., the exact time he had targeted, a small square of paper materialized on the laboratory floor. The camera captured the paper appearing out of nowhere, falling gently to the ground, and remaining there until the evening cleaning staff discovered it and discarded it, thinking it was trash. "It worked!" Hai exclaimed, pumping his fist in the air. "It actually worked!" Dr. Lamb felt his heart pounding in his chest. Despite his confidence in the mathematics, seeing actual proof of time displacement left him momentarily speechless. Mai, however, frowned. "Wait, something's wrong." She pointed to Dr. Lamb's desk in the current timeline. "The rose? Where's the rose?" Dr. Lamb turned. The vase on his desk was indeed empty. The rose that had been there moments before had vanished. "That's odd," he said, his excitement giving way to confusion. "It was just here." Mai checked her tablet. "According to my calendar, I never bought you a rose today. I considered it, but decided on a card instead." She looked up, puzzled. "But I distinctly remember buying the rose. I can even recall the flower shop I visited on my way to work." Dr. Lamb felt a chill run through him. The timeline has already shifted. A micro change. The note appeared yesterday. Someone found it. And somehow that led to you buying a card instead of a rose. But that's such a small detail. Hai said, "How could a random note change something so specific?" "The butterfly effect," Dr. Lamb replied. "A tiny perturbation creates unpredictable consequences. The cleaning staff found the note, mentioned it to someone. That person was delayed by the conversation, bumped into someone else. Who then? Who knows? The causal chain is impossible to trace. But it ended with Mai making a slightly different decision." The three scientists stood in silence, contemplating the implications. What they had witnessed wasn't just time travel. It was timeline alteration. Even the smallest intervention could change reality. "We should stop now," Mai said firmly. "Report our findings. Let the oversight committee evaluate the risks." But Dr. Lamb couldn't stop. Not when he was this close to a breakthrough that would revolutionize human understanding of time itself. A missing rose was insignificant. He needed to attempt something more substantial. "One more test," he insisted. "Something that will provide undeniable proof of the technology's potential." "What are you suggesting?" Mai asked warily. "A bigger jump, not just a note. Me, I'll go back myself." "Absolutely not," Mai protested. "We have no idea if biological material can safely traverse the temporal boundary." "The math says it can," Dr. Lamb countered. "All matter follows the same physical laws." Hai, who had been quiet, suddenly spoke up. "What if we start with something in between? Not just paper, but not a human either. Maybe a plant or a small insect?" Dr. Lamb shook his head. "We don't have time for incremental steps. The university could shut us down any day if they discover we're conducting unauthorized tests." "So you'd rather risk your life?" Mai demanded. "I'd rather make history," Dr. Lamb replied. "Besides, I've already calibrated the watch for human transport," before either of his colleagues could stop him. Dr. Lamb strapped the quantum watch to his wrist. Unlike the note, which required the chamber, the watch could create a temporal displacement field around the wearer. At least, that was the theory. "Dr. Lamb, please," Mai begged. "At least let us run diagnostics first." I've run every possible diagnostic, he said, his finger hovering over the activation button. It's now or never. With a deep breath, he pressed the button. The world around Dr. Lamb dissolved into a kaleidoscope of light and sensation. His body felt simultaneously compressed and expanded, as if every atom were being pulled apart and pushed together. Time itself seemed to flow around him like a viscous liquid, dragging him backward through its current. Then, abruptly, everything stabilized. He found himself standing in an open field, the noon sun beating down on him. In the distance, he could see the early foundations of what would one day become Hanoi University. The air smelled different, cleaner, yet tinged with unfamiliar smoke. Dr. Lamb checked the watch. According to its display, he had traveled approximately 200 years into the past, much further than he had intended. His hands trembled as he realized the magnitude of what he had accomplished. He was standing in the early 19th century, witnessing history firsthand. A man approached him from a nearby path, eyeing his modern clothing with suspicion. The man wore simple farmer's clothes, his face weathered by sun and labor. "Who are you?" the man asked in a dialect of Vietnamese that Dr. Lamb recognized as archaic but still understandable. "What are you doing on my land?" Dr. Lamb hesitated. He hadn't planned for actual interaction with people from the past. Every instinct told him to minimize contact, to avoid creating paradoxes or timeline alterations. "I'm just a traveler," he said carefully. "I apologize for trespassing. I'll be on my way." The man studied him curiously. "Your clothes are strange. Where are you from?" "Far away," Dr. Lamb replied vaguely. "I won't trouble you long." But the man seemed determined to engage. "You must join me for a meal. We rarely get visitors here." Before Dr. Lamb could decline, the man added, "I am Nguyen Van Hoang. And you?" The name struck Dr. Lamb like lightning. Nguyen Van Hoang, his own ancestor, 7 generations removed. He had seen the name in his family records. This couldn't be coincidence. "I'm Lamb," he replied, too stunned to think clearly. "Lamb, just Lamb, no family name." In his shock, Dr. Lamb made his first critical mistake. "Lam Nguyen," he said, inadvertently reversing the traditional Vietnamese name order to match modern Western convention, and revealing his family connection to this man. Hoang's eyes widened. "Nguyen? We share a family name. Are we related? Perhaps distant cousins?" "It's possible," Dr. Lamb managed, already regretting the interaction. "But I really must go." "Nonsense. You must meet my family. My wife will prepare a meal." Before Dr. Lamb could protest further, Hoang was leading him toward a modest farmhouse. Dr. Lamb's mind raced with potential consequences. Every word he spoke, every action he took, could potentially alter his own timeline. He needed to leave immediately. "I truly appreciate your hospitality," he said, stopping abruptly. "But I have urgent business elsewhere." Hoang looked disappointed but nodded in understanding. "Perhaps another time, distant cousin." Dr. Lamb activated the quantum watch, setting coordinates for his original timeline. The world dissolved once again as he felt himself being pulled forward through time. When reality stabilized, he found himself back in his laboratory. Mai and Hai rushed toward him, their faces filled with relief. "You're back," Mai exclaimed. "You've been gone for nearly 3 hours." Dr. Lamb frowned. 3 hours? I was only in the past for about 10 minutes. Temporal displacement asymmetry. Hai suggested. Time flows differently when you're out of your native timeline. Dr. Lamb nodded. But his attention was drawn to something odd. Where's the Wi-Fi signal? He asked, noticing the disconnected icon on the laboratory computers. Mai looked confused. Wi-Fi? You mean wireless network connection? We've never had that in the lab. The university uses hardwired connections for security reasons. Dr. Lamb felt his stomach sink. No, we definitely had Wi-Fi. The entire campus has had wireless internet for decades. Hai and Mai exchanged concerned glances. Dr. Lamb, Mai said carefully. Wireless network technology has been heavily restricted in Vietnam since the Cybersecurity Act of 2038. Only government facilities and approved corporations have access to wireless transmission technology. Dr. Lamb staggered to a chair, trying to process this information. That's not right. That's not how it was before I left. He quickly accessed the internet through the wired connection, searching for historical information about his family. To his horror, he discovered that Nguyen Van Hoang was now credited with founding a small but influential school of mathematics in 19th century Vietnam, something that had never existed in the original timeline. The historical record indicated that Hoang had been inspired by a strangely dressed cousin who had visited briefly and spoken of advanced concepts. What have I done? Dr. Lamb whispered. Over the next few days, Dr. Lamb discovered more discrepancies between his memories and the current reality. Some were minor. Different brands dominated the marketplace. Certain buildings stood in different locations, but others were profound. The entire city's technological infrastructure had developed along a different path, apparently stemming from his ancestors' premature interest in mathematics and subsequent influence on local education. Despite Mai's growing concerns, Dr. Lamb insisted on a third experiment. This time, he would be more careful. He would observe only, making no contact with anyone from the past. The stock market, he decided. I'll go back 10 years and simply observe the market trends. No interaction necessary. Haven't you learned anything from what's already happened? Mai argued. Every jump creates unpredictable consequences, which is why I need to understand the mechanism better. Dr. Lamb countered. If I can identify patterns in how timeline alterations propagate, we might be able to develop safeguards. Or you might erase us from existence entirely, Mai said grimly. Nevertheless, Dr. Lamb proceeded with his plan. He programmed the quantum watch for 10 years in the past, targeting the National Stock Exchange building. This time, the temporal transition felt smoother. Dr. Lamb materialized in a maintenance closet within the stock exchange, a location he had chosen specifically to avoid immediate detection. Through the small window in the door, he could see traders bustling about, calling orders, their faces displaying the full spectrum of human emotion as fortunes were made and lost. Dr. Lamb carefully recorded market movements on a small digital device he had brought with him. He noted which companies soared and which collapsed, planning to compare this data with historical records upon his return. As he worked, he noticed a maintenance worker approaching the closet. Panicking, Dr. Lamb backed away from the door, accidentally bumping into a shelf of cleaning supplies. A bottle of industrial cleaner fell, crashing loudly on the floor and spilling its contents. The maintenance worker opened the door, finding Dr. Lamb standing amid the spilled chemicals. "Hey, what are you doing in here?" the worker demanded. "I'm sorry, I got lost," Dr. Lamb stammered. "I was looking for the restroom." "This area is restricted," the worker said suspiciously. "Let me see your ID badge." Realizing he had no plausible explanation, Dr. Lamb activated the quantum watch, disappearing before the astonished worker's eyes. The return to his present was violent. Dr. Lamb materialized in his laboratory amidst what appeared to be chaos. Emergency alarms blared, and the room was bathed in the red glow of warning lights. "What's happening?" he shouted, looking for Mai and Hai. They emerged from behind a protective barrier, their expressions a mixture of relief and fury. "Thank God you're back," Mai said, rushing to him. The entire financial system collapsed 2 days ago. Every market worldwide entered freefall simultaneously. "What? How?" Hai handed him a tablet displaying news headlines. It started with mass panic about market manipulation. Apparently, 10 years ago, a ghost trader was spotted in the stock exchange. A man who appeared out of nowhere and then vanished into thin air when confronted. Security footage went viral, and conspiracy theories about supernatural market manipulation have undermined investor confidence ever since. Dr. Lamb felt the blood drain from his face as he watched grainy security footage of himself disappearing from the maintenance closet. That's impossible. There shouldn't have been cameras in that closet. The maintenance worker was wearing a body camera, Mai explained. Standard procedure after a series of thefts. You couldn't have known. Dr. Lamb sank into a chair, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what he had caused. A global financial crisis, triggered by his brief, supposedly observational visit to the past. "We have to fix this," he said finally. "I need to go back and prevent myself from being seen." "Absolutely not," Mai exclaimed. "Each intervention only makes things worse. The timelines are becoming increasingly unstable with each jump." "She's right," Hai added, his youthful enthusiasm now tempered by the gravity of their situation. "Our instruments are detecting temporal distortion waves emanating from each of your entry points in the past. They're like ripples in a pond, except they're ripples in the fabric of time itself." Dr. Lamb ran his hands through his hair in frustration. "Then what do you suggest? We just live with the consequences? Accept that I've caused a global financial meltdown?" "We need to think more carefully," Mai said. "The problem isn't just that you're changing the past. It's that you're creating paradoxes. Each change you make affects your own timeline, which then affects the decisions that led you to make those changes in the first place." The three scientists spent days analyzing the temporal physics involved, searching for a solution. Meanwhile, the world outside their laboratory continued to deteriorate. The financial crisis had triggered political instability, and rumors of the ghost trader had evolved into full-blown conspiracy theories about government time travel experiments. Dr. Lamb made a difficult decision. "I need to go back to the beginning. Before I built the quantum watch, I need to stop myself from ever creating it." "That's the most dangerous paradox of all," Mai protested. "If you prevent yourself from building the watch, then you won't have the watch to go back and stop yourself." "Not necessarily," Dr. Lamb argued. "According to the multiverse interpretation of quantum mechanics, my intervention would create a branch timeline. In that branch, I never build the watch, but the version of me having this conversation right now, would still exist in this timeline." "That's theoretical," Hai pointed out. "We have no evidence that's how temporal mechanics actually work." "We have no choice," Dr. Lamb insisted. "The damage is spreading, and it's my responsibility to stop it." Despite their objections, Dr. Lamb programmed the quantum watch for a 10-year jump to the past, to the day he first conceptualized the temporal displacement theory that led to the watch's creation. The temporal transition this time was rough, filled with turbulence that hadn't been present in previous jumps. Dr. Lamb materialized in his old office at the university, nearly collapsing from the intensity of the journey. His younger self sat at the desk, scribbling equations that Dr. Lamb instantly recognized as the foundational work for temporal displacement theory. The younger Dr. Lamb looked up, startled by the sudden appearance of a stranger. "Who are you? How did you get in here?" Dr. Lamb took a deep breath. "I'm you, from 10 years in the future, and I'm here to stop you from making a terrible mistake." His younger self's expression shifted from shock to fascination. "Time travel? It works? My equations are correct?" "Yes, but the consequences are catastrophic." Dr. Lamb explained. "Every intervention in the past creates unpredictable changes to the timeline. I've caused financial collapse, technological regression, and who knows what else." The younger Dr. Lamb stood up, circling his future self with undisguised wonder. "But you're here. You exist. That means it's possible." "Listen to me," Dr. Lamb said urgently. "You need to destroy this research. Pursue something else. Quantum computing, particle physics, anything but time travel." "I can't do that," his younger self replied, eyes gleaming with ambition. "Not now that I know it's possible." Dr. Lamb grabbed his younger self by the shoulders. "You don't understand. The damage I've caused can be prevented." His younger self interrupted. "Now that I know the risks, I can build in safeguards, design protocols to prevent paradoxes." "That's not how it works. The very act of time travel creates distortions that can't be controlled." As they argued, Dr. Lamb noticed his quantum watch beginning to glow more intensely than normal. The office lights flickered, and a high-pitched whine filled the air. "What's happening?" his younger self asked, backing away from the watch. "Temporal feedback loop," Dr. Lamb realized with horror. "Our interaction is creating a paradox more severe than any I've encountered. The watch can't handle the distortion." The quantum watch began to vibrate violently on his wrist. Dr. Lamb tried to remove it, but the clasp had fused shut. The temporal distortion field expanded outward, enveloping both versions of Dr. Lamb. "Get away from me!" Dr. Lamb shouted to his younger self. But it was too late. The quantum watch exploded in a blinding flash of light and energy. The temporal distortion field collapsed in on itself, creating a singularity that tore through the fabric of space-time. The last thing Dr. Lamb saw was his younger self reaching toward him before everything went white. Dr. Lamb regained consciousness in what appeared to be his laboratory. But something was profoundly wrong. Objects flickered in and out of existence. The walls seemed to phase between different architectural styles. Outside the window, he could see Hanoi, but it wasn't one Hanoi. It was many, overlapping like transparent slides. Modern skyscrapers stood alongside colonial buildings and ancient temples, all occupying the same space simultaneously. Mai and Hai rushed to him, their forms occasionally blurring as if they were rapidly switching between different versions of themselves. "What happened?" Mai asked, her voice echoing strangely. "One moment you were gone. The next, the entire lab exploded. And then, this." "Temporal fracturing," Dr. Lamb said, the horror of realization washing over him. When the watch exploded, it created a cascade effect. Multiple timelines are collapsing into each other. Through the laboratory window, they watched people on the street below moving in strange patterns, sometimes appearing to walk backward or freeze in place. Weather patterns shifted rapidly. Sunshine gave way to rain, then snow, then back to sunshine, all within seconds. "How do we stop it?" Hai asked, his form stabilizing momentarily before beginning to blur again. "The watch is destroyed," Dr. Lamb said, "but there might be another way." He led them to a hidden compartment in the laboratory floor. removing a panel to reveal a small safe. Inside was a prototype of the quantum watch. An earlier version he had created as a backup. "It's not as advanced," he explained. "But it might be enough to fix this." "How?" Mai demanded. "Going back again will only make things worse." "Not if we don't go back," Dr. Lamb said. "The problem isn't just that we changed the past. It's that we created paradoxes that the universe can't resolve. But there's one thing we haven't tried." "What's that?" Hai asked. "Closing the loop. Creating a stable time loop instead of a paradox." Dr. Lamb explained his theory. If they could send information back to themselves at the exact moment before his first experiment, the note saying, "Hello from the past," they might be able to warn themselves not to proceed. This wouldn't prevent the loop from existing, but it would create a stable loop rather than an expanding cascade of paradoxes. "It's risky," Mai said. "We'd be adding another temporal event to an already unstable situation." "But if it works," Dr. Lamb countered, "we create a closed causal loop. A paradox, yes, but one that the universe might be able to accommodate. With few alternatives." They prepared the prototype watch. Instead of a note saying, "Hello from the past," they wrote detailed instructions to their past selves, explaining the catastrophe and how to avoid it. "The temporal coordinates need to be precise," Dr. Lamb said as he programmed the device. "We need to target the exact moment before I sent the original note." As he worked, the laboratory continued to shift around them. Entire walls disappeared temporarily, revealing other versions of the lab from different timelines. Equipment transformed into older or newer models, then back again. "Hurry," Mai urged, as her form began to blur more dramatically. "I think we're running out of time." Dr. Lamb finished the programming and placed the new note in the prototype's chamber. "This has to work," he said, more to himself than to the others. "It's our only chance." He activated the device. The note vanished in a flash of blue light. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, slowly, the laboratory began to stabilize. The flickering walls solidified into a single consistent structure. Outside, the overlapping versions of Hanoi merged into one coherent cityscape. Mai and Hai's forms stabilized completely, their expressions shifting from fear to cautious relief. "It's working," Hai whispered. "The timelines are reintegrating." But their celebration was premature. As the timelines consolidated, the prototype watch began to glow with the same dangerous intensity that had preceded the previous explosion. "It's happening again!" Mai shouted. "The watch can't handle the temporal energy!" Dr. Lamb made a split-second decision. He grabbed the prototype, ran to the laboratory's containment chamber, designed for hazardous materials, and threw the watch inside, sealing the door. "Get down!" he yelled, diving behind a reinforced lab bench. The explosion was contained within the chamber, but the temporal energy released was still enormous. A visible shockwave of distortion spread outward, passing through the laboratory and beyond. When the energy dissipated, Dr. Lamb, Mai, and Hai found themselves in a laboratory that appeared normal. No flickering, no phase shifting. Outside, Hanoi looked as it should, a single, coherent city. "Did it work?" Hai asked cautiously. Dr. Lamb checked the computer systems. "According to these records, I never built a functional quantum watch. My research concluded that temporal displacement was theoretically possible, but practically unfeasible due to energy requirements. But we remember everything," Mai said. "We remember the jumps, the changes, the fracturing. Temporal echo," Dr. Lamb suggested. Our consciousness existed at the nexus of the paradox. So we retain memories of events that technically never happened. They spent days investigating, confirming that the world had indeed returned to something resembling their original timeline. The financial markets were stable. Wireless technology was unrestricted. Dr. Lamb's ancestor had lived a normal life as a farmer without founding any mathematics schools. But there were subtle differences. Certain technologies had developed slightly differently. Some historical events had unfolded in ways that didn't match their memories. The world wasn't exactly as it had been, but it was stable. And the catastrophic fracturing had been averted. In the weeks that followed, Dr. Lamb dismantled his remaining research. The equations and designs for the quantum watch were systematically destroyed. The components recycled for other projects. "What will you research now?" Mai asked him one evening as they closed the laboratory. Dr. Lamb smiled ruefully. "I'm thinking of focusing on quantum observation technologies, ways to perceive other timelines without interacting with them." "Still can't let go of time completely, can you?" she said with a knowing smile. "Some obsessions never fade," he admitted. "But I've learned my lesson. Time travel is the most dangerous weapon ever conceived, not because of what it could do to our enemies, but because of what it inevitably does to ourselves." As they left the laboratory, Dr. Lamb felt a strange sensation. A brief moment when he seemed to perceive multiple versions of the university campus superimposed on one another. But it passed quickly, leaving only a faint impression, like the memory of a dream. In his pocket, his fingers brushed against a small piece of paper, the only artifact he had kept from their ordeal. It was the original note, the one that had started everything. Hello from the past. A reminder of how close they had come to unraveling the very fabric of reality. Some doors, he had learned, were best left closed. Some knowledge, best left theoretical. The universe had its reasons for keeping time flowing in one direction, and Dr. Lamb had finally learned to respect those reasons. As he walked home through the streets of Hanoi, he imagined he could still see faint echoes of other timelines, ghostly buildings that had never been built, people who had never existed. Whether these were actual temporal remnants or simply his imagination, he couldn't say. What he knew with certainty was that time was not a toy to be played with, not a frontier to be conquered. It was the foundation upon which reality itself rested. And tampering with that foundation had nearly brought everything crashing down. Dr. Lamb had set out to make history. Instead, he had learned the importance of letting history make itself.